right, we are live. Honking my odd, everyone.
Ain't nobody there.
Not yet.
Yeah, just wait.
Okay. Honking my odd Facebook. We got some folks logging in on Facebook over here. Honking my odd. Hope you all are having a Haru Nefer today, and a happy Mother's Day to those of you who are watching on Facebook. And I see a couple people joining us on YouTube. Uncle my aunt to YouTube family.
We can't make those words bigger.
I don't think so. You talking about the chat?
Yeah.
I'm on the iPad.
Yeah.
I think we can. Whatever. We gotta do it another time.
Yeah, I can read it. Auten Octen, is that Kaika on YouTube? Auten Octen Sinet. And Auten Octen to Sinet B. All right, so we got about 6 people on Facebook. We've got about 6 people on YouTube. I'll give my aunt to Sir Wab Mentura joining us on YouTube.
Okay.
All right, so welcome and thank you guys for joining us today for our 3rd episode of the Crook and the Flail. This is the opportunity for us to, to talk about things that are happening in current events, to talk about our health, and to talk about and things that we can do to keep our health in order, strengthen our immune system, strengthen our bodies while we are staying safe during the coronavirus crisis. This is a time for us to answer questions that we've been getting from you guys in the community about what it means to be comedic and how to be comedic and just all sorts of questions. We actually got quite a number of questions this week from you, and we're going to address one of them today and save the rest of them for future episodes. But thank you guys definitely for sending in your questions and your queries for us to address during the show. And for those of you who may have questions that you'd like us to address at a future time, feel free to send them in to templeofanew@gmail.com or to use the Facebook Messenger feature or the chat feature on YouTube to send us your question. And we will, if we don't answer it live on the air, we will answer it in a future episode of The Crook and the Flail.
Roll call.
We got to do roll call. Okay. All right. So we start off with, like we always do, we'll start off with the roll call. So where is everybody chiming in from and watching from? We just want to know who's on the line and where folks are at. So what's up, guys? Where y'all coming in from? Alton, Kathy. We got Sinette V in Harlem. That's what's up. Okay. Shout out to New Rochelle. Shout out to Ikerti in Newcastle, Delaware. Shout out to Camden, New Jersey. That's what's up. South Jersey, yes. Atlanta, nice. Thanks for joining us, Marshall. Nadine in Lake Charles, Louisiana, nice. More South Jersey in the building. Florida in the building. I'll give my aunt, Darlene. It's been a while. So good to see you. See you. We got Philly in the building. Michigan in the place. That's what's up. All right.
YouTube is shy, right?
YouTube is shy. They shy. But we got Brick City in the building. What's up, Makra? Okay, good. So we got the roll call going. And as always, we're just really grateful to be able to connect with you guys in this way and to be able to lessen the separation between us. We might be social distancing, but that doesn't mean that we can't facilitate connection. And we're just extremely grateful that you guys continue to invest in us by giving us your time, by giving us your donations, by giving us your energy and your support. We're really grateful for that. Shout out to Canada. I don't know what part of Canada, but shout out to Canada. I see Las Vegas in the building and East Orange in the building as well. So again, we're just grateful that you guys were willing and able to take the time today, and on other occasions, to spend some time with us and to chat with us about this legacy, and to keep this powerful energy going. Okay. So today is Mother's Day, as we mentioned. So first of all, let me just start by wishing a happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there. Mothers whose children are little, mothers whose children are grown, mothers whose children are no longer with us in the physical plane, but who are still with us always in their hearts. Mothers to be, adopted mothers, stepmothers, godmothers, grandmothers, aunties and cousins who mother. There are all forms of ways that women nurture and women mother others and take care of others. And so we honor the mothering energy. We honor the energy of the nurturer today, and that feminine energy that helps to not just birth life, but then facilitates the process by which life is sustained, because that's really what motherhood is about. Motherhood is about you could give birth, but then if you don't have that energy of nurturing and nourishment for life to be sustained and for life to be developed and for people to grow and to become their best selves, then what is human existence? Mothers are here to help us be our best selves. They're here to help us understand who we are. They're here to help us understand why we are, and they're here to help us to become who we're meant to be. So shout out to all the righteous, excellent, divine mothers of the light for all of their many contributions. Shout out to our mothers of all of our ancestral lines. Those righteous mothers who give us energy, continue to give us energy, who protect us, who guide us, who love us, and who care for us, even as ancestresses. Your power and your presence and your energy is felt today and every day. And we honor you today and every day. And we love you for the work that you do and for the presence that you are. I'll end our Mother's Day segment off by reading a passage from the Hosea. This is one of our most commonly recommended books in our reading list, which is the selections from the Hosea compiled by Milana Karenga. And in here, there's a passage that we often point to on Mother's Day from our ancestor Anui. And he wrote, "Double the gifts your mother gave you and care for her as she cared for you. She bore a heavy burden in you and did not abandon you. When she brought you forth after your months, she was still bound closely to you. For her breasts were still in your mouth for 3 years. While you grew, she cleaned your filth without disgust in her heart and without saying, 'Oh, what can I do?' She placed you in school to be educated, and she came there daily on your behalf with bread and beer for your teacher. Thus, when you become a young man and marry a wife and establish your house, lose not sight of your own childhood. Raise your children as your mother did you. Do not let your mother find fault with you, lest she raise her hands to God against you, and God will hear her complaints and punish you." So it's just a reminder that those of us who are raised well, and those of us who have righteous, strong mothers who gave to us their very best, that it's also our charge to then turn around and give our children our very best in the same spirit that our mothers gave to us. It's our charge to, if we were raised with righteous principles, if we were raised to be good people, if we were raised to believe in ourselves and believe in our excellence, that's the same energy we have to give to our children. We have to raise our children to be strong. We have to raise them to understand their beauty as Black African beings. We have to raise them to understand their divinity. We have to give them all of our support and all of our backing. And we have to make sure that we make our mothers proud. And that is the way that we restore and redeem our lineage over and over and over again, is by constantly doing the work that makes our mothers, grandmothers, fathers, grandfathers, all of our ancestors and our ancestral lineage proud of who we are.
Let's see who else is getting caught up.
All right. So we got Harmony watching on both YouTube and Facebook. Shout out. Woo! Calais, we love you too. I'm gonna get the Kerheb over here to help me with this. We having technical difficulties over here. So we got the Kerheb Hasedi Kepper here helping us with keeping everything together. Do our netter. Yeah. Alton Anitra from Spartanburg, South Carolina. Dua for joining us today and for catching the roll call. That's what's up.
Some people wrote some stuff early on. I wanted to know what they said.
It wasn't.
There's something about SR said. Yeah.
Oakland, California, in our meeting and in a SARSET's meeting at the same time. Okay. That was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, what?
No, I know he ain't gonna stand there all day.
Yeah,
Just stand there and hold it, Kerheb.
Nah, I would have put something else on it, but it's
Okay.
gonna fall.
It's gonna fall.
We'll be with you shortly.
How's that?
I guess that's good.
That's fine. Yeah, that's
So I
fine.
want to start by saying, Onkin Ma'at and a Yiti and Matep, and welcome to the Crook and the Flail, where we give ancient ancestral wisdom and guidance of our ancestors for modern application in the spirit of Saruj, or in the spirit of Smai Tawi, which is the spirit of unity, with the vision of Saruj Tawi, which is to restore our tradition. So I say Onkin Ma'at and a Yiti and Matep to the first family, which is the Temple of Anu, and to the righteous and respectful chat. So big up to all of you. So I want to open it up with this a reading from the Seba'it, the text. It says, walk each day in the way of Ma'at, which is the way of truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, order, balance, and reciprocity. Walk each day in the way of Ma'at, and you will reach the place in which you're going. And that's to say that we're all endeavoring to do better, and we're all endeavoring to be better. And if you stay on code, if you stay on protocol, and you do what's always in the best interest of your higher self and your higher being, you will reach the place that you're going. You will achieve fulfillment. So today, all we're saying is that we're here with you and for you through this pandemic. And we're all in this together. And there's another saying, I think from Ankh Shoshanki, it said, those who struggle together with the people of their town shall rejoice in victory with them. So we're all on this path of doing great things, trying to be great people. But we also have to have these conversations that we do in the Crook and the Flail, and also with the communion, as also with what the Shrine of Ma'at does with the Ascension. We have to work out the discrepancies and the incongruencies that we have as far as doctrine and philosophy in this community, because when we work those things out, that lends to the focus that we need to have when we're on that path to victory. And fortunately, this year, according to the reading of the year, we're governed, or we have the support of the Neter Heru. So we say a Nejarak Heru, and we're also supported by the Neteret Het Heru. So we say a Nejarech Het Heru, all on this Heru, Aten Ra, this day of the sun, and that's what we're here for. So now understand, we are Kemetic, we are Kemeti. That means we're initiated as therefore also we're adherents to the tradition of ancient Kemet. And as we know, Kemet is arguably one of the oldest traditions on the planet. We feel that we actually, through the Ma'at philosophy, we feel that we vindicate ATR, African traditional religion, which we are now affectionately calling Kimoyo, which is the principles of vitalism, or the ways of vitalism. So I want to take a few moments to clarify some things that I say. Sometimes you hear me say I'm a spiritualist, or we're in the spiritualism. So I need to clarify that, because I've now recognized that spiritualism or calling yourself a spiritualist means something in the West. It's a tradition that can be traced as a European. I think his name is Allan Kardec. And I think it's around 1854 he started a movement called spiritualism. And they have these events called white table events. And it was pretty much, if you heard of seances before, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the white folks doing seances, white folks or Europeans doing working with spirits. I guess is a form of European ancestral work. So when you say spiritualist or spiritualism, they tend to think that's what you're talking about, but that's not what I'm talking about when I say I'm a spiritualist or we're spiritualists. So that spiritualist movement went on to influence hoodoo, and it went on to influence what's called espiritismo in the Hispanic tradition. Hoodoo is a mixture of voodoo, indigenous practices, as well as biblical magic. And the spiritismo it has some voodoo in it, but very little, but it more has indigenous Hispanic magic cultural references, as well as the Bible. So espiritismo is hoodoo for Spanish folks, or for what hoodoo is for what we call black folks and stuff like that. But when I'm talking about spiritualism, I'm not talking about hoodoo or espiritismo. When I'm talking about spiritualism, I'm talking about kimoyo, which is the principles of vitalism, which means we understand that everything is energy, and even though everything is energy, everything has an inner secret sacred space, which there exists an intelligence. And that means everything has an intelligence or inner intelligence, which is part of the all, which we call Atum Re or Atum Ra, which the Yoruba or Ifa will call Olodumare. So everything has an inner dimension. So through Kesu, through ritual, we can access and interface with that inner dimension. So when that means I have a certain way that I approach drinking water through the principle of vitalism. There's a certain way I go about even breathing and inhaling air. It's a certain way I go about ingesting food. It's a certain way I go about socializing with different people, places, or even things. That is what we call the principle of vitalism. Everything has an energy. Every place has an energy. And being a spiritualist means you must be aware and you must negotiate your reality, knowing that at all times. So I think everybody already intuitively knew that's what I was talking about, but I just needed to make a distinction between the European movement of spiritualism and what I mean by spiritualism. So what we're really referring to is kimoyo. I guess kimoyoism. And by the way, as far as donations, once again, if you feel touched, moved, or inspired, or reminded to be on your higher purpose, on your path, so if you want to give a donation,
we would greatly appreciate it. It's possible through Cash App, $ Temple of Anu, one word, no spaces, no special characters or underscores. You could also do it by PayPal, templeofanu@gmail.com. And we thank you, those of you who feel so inclined, for your support and for your contributions to our movement and to the work that we're doing. And we'll continue to be here to share energy with you all in this space. For those of you who are not compelled yet or who cannot for various circumstances, that's okay. We'll still be here anyway. But we know that some of you are able to and want to, and we're grateful for that. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we want to move on we want to start with the question that we got this week. You want to start with do that last. Okay. You want to start with the conversation we was having about the vaccinations?
Yeah.
Okay. So Vincent and I was having a conversation about vaccinations. I think it really was something that came up out of, things that we saw happening in the news and conversations that we've seen on social media. And so, thinking about like the current events portion of the Crook and the Flail, we were like, okay, let's talk about this vaccination thing. There's been a lot of talk recently in the conscious community from people who are really concerned about a vaccination coming out for the coronavirus, for the SARS-CoV-19 specifically, or SARS-CoV-2, whatever it's called. It's called many different things. And just a lot of assertions that the vaccination will be imposed upon us, that it will be mandatory, and things like that. So I think it was something that we really wanted to discuss, and I would be interested to see what you guys' perspective are on the subject. Like, have you guys heard those things about the vaccinations? Have you guys heard that it's going to be mandatory? Have you guys, like, what are the things that you might have heard about it? I think from from my perspective, I'll start with just me. Um, you know, a vaccination I would expect would be very far off in terms of like not being able to be. I don't even think there will be a vaccination available for quite some time. Like we're still in the process of researching and et cetera, as far as the pharmaceutical companies are concerned, just finding the right medical, combinations to even combat this virus, right? So we're not talking about something that's going to come out like in the immediate future. But one thing that I definitely feel that we all need to be mindful about is that if something were to come out in the next month or in the next 6 months or even in the next year, we all have to be mindful about like what is the level of like research that has been done about this vaccination. What is the level of testing that has been done about with this vaccination? Like, what has happened to other people who have taken this vaccination? And the likelihood is that if anything is being rushed out to the market, it's not going to undergo like years and years of testing before we take it. It's going to, we won't know what it looks like for someone to get this vaccination and live with that vaccination for 5 years or 10 years, etc. We won't know that. If it comes out in 6 months, there will not have been 5 years to test it. So I think my immediate expectation is that we would want to like not take the vaccination. Like that would not be our immediate desire, right? And so in response to that, you had asked like, well, what if it's mandatory, right? Like, what if the vaccination is mandatory? Like, what if we have to get vaccinated? And I definitely think that might be a concern of a lot of people out there right now. Particularly those of us who don't just willingly submit ourselves to the pharmaceuticals and the medical industry. And those of us who really would not want to just just immediately like submit ourselves and just trust the government on these types of things. So I think it would be important in that case for us to be mindful about the laws that are being passed, right? The laws that are being passed and the things that are being written legally. Because right now, like the only thing we have to compare it to is the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine is not a mandatory vaccination. It is a suggested vaccination. It may even be a highly suggested vaccination. But there isn't yet a system in place where the flu vaccine is mandatory for every adult human in the United States. Like I have never had a flu vaccination since being an adult. It's not mandatory. I've never been stopped going to certain places or been asked to prove that I've been vaccinated. So what we would need to keep our eyes out for would be like, what are laws that are being set in place, and what are structures that are being set in place to determine that a vaccination is mandatory? Because they would have to create a structure. And so what would that structure look like? How do you prove that you've been vaccinated? How do they prove that you haven't been vaccinated? How do they check you? When do they check you? What places would you be going where you would need to have it, and what places would you be going where you don't need to have it? How are these things confirmed on a regular basis? So from my perspective, I would be like, okay, let's start by looking at the law, and let's start by paying attention to what the legal system is saying and what laws are being put forth by legislators, governors, etc., in order to determine whether or not those structures to require a vaccination is being put in place. Because right now there is not a structure in place to require vaccinations for adults. Obviously for children, like children can be required to be vaccinated in order to go to school or in order to go to daycare and things like that. But for adults, where I don't know that I've seen the structures. I see Nutty said that at hospitals they make it mandatory for employees. If not, that may lead up to termination. That's good information to know. I didn't know that. That's probably true about the flu vaccine as well. So that might very well be true for the coronavirus vaccine, in which case then you would need to take necessary steps to determine how you can get around that, if you can get around that. And I actually don't know if you can. I don't know, like, can you get around the flu vaccination? Do you know what I mean? But Judy Ross says the mass media talking points keep pushing the narrative of drugs such as vaccinations. The people are being influenced. That's true with Judy Ross. I think the point of our conversation here is so that we can pull ourselves out of that mind space, and so we can ask some really important analytical questions in this space, so that we are not being influenced by the fear philosophy that's being pushed by the media and that's being pushed by the controlling factors in the country, right? So what are the questions that we should be asking, and what are the structures that we should be considering, and the things we should be considering in order to make the right decisions for ourselves, right? Bill Gates seems a little too excited over the crisis. He seems oddly fixated on pandemics, vaccines, and population control. I find it strangely curious that a computer science guy is taking the lead on medical and public health issues. You know, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has always been very heavily involved in farm. I don't think that that's new. So I would be like, okay, well, let's go back into their records as a foundation and determine how far in the past have they been giving money to. I think what's new is that it's our awareness of their involvement is new, but I don't think that their involvement is new. I think they've always been, Bill Gates has been, I was saying this just yesterday, like he was one of the people who made a billionaire's pledge that they were going to spend their entire wealth before they die, right? Like that they are committed. They have like this billionaire's pledge, and they're going to use these different foundations in order to give away all of their money so that there's no money left by the time that they die. And if I'm not mistaken, Bill Gates actually came up with that billionaire's pledge. So his foundation has for a long time been giving money away, and the medical industry is one of those places where that money has been going for a long time. So I think that, again, what's happening is that we become more aware of that phenomenon, not necessarily that he's only involved in this crisis. I think he's been involved. And so I would follow the money trail and follow the records back to see like how far back has he been involved and things like that, versus just focusing on his involvement in this particular crisis, right? Let me see. I saw some movement over here on YouTube as well. There is currently conversation about employers being able to make it mandatory if they provide health insurance. And again, y'all said great. That's the kind of thing that I think we have to watch. We have to be aware of and cognizant of. We can't just say it's going to be made mandatory. We have to be able to point to like, well, they've passed this law. Well, they've written this into the health insurance code. Well, they've written this into the such and such. Like, where is the actual code in the law that says, so that we understand what's happening. And then as those codes and laws are being brought up by our politicians and being brought to the table, then vote out our politicians. Write letters to the politicians. Tell them that they don't have your support. Support their opposition, right? If you have a politician that's saying like, oh, I'm going to support this bill that makes vaccinations mandatory, then don't support that politician. Support their opposition. And I know that we as Black people, we don't like to get involved in politics. We do this thing where we like, oh, none of them are for us, so why should we participate? Like, well, none of them are for us. But that doesn't mean that one of them can't be worse than the other one. That doesn't mean that there can't be things that we're willing to be like, well, that law that you want over there is not as bad as this other thing. So I'll support you as long as you don't want to do this other thing. So at the end of the day, there still has to be some means by which we are using the system to our advantage. And I'm not suggesting that I know all the answers about how we do that. I'm just suggesting that we do that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just suggesting that we get involved, that we understand what's happening, and then we figure out a way as a collective to influence what happens rather than just waiting for it to happen. That's what I'm suggesting. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. There are a lot of brilliant political black minds out there who have different suggestions and ways and contributions that we should read and follow up on and understand so that we know politically how we should move in the world. I'm just suggesting that we need to move politically in the world. We cannot just be like, oh, the politicians did this thing, it's so terrible. Like, no, we are citizens, we are their constituents. It's our responsibility to hold them accountable. And so how do we do that? How do we stay aware of what's happening? How do we stay aware of what people are voting for, what they are signing bills on, what they are presenting bills on? Like, if you co-authored a bill on something, then and your constituents don't agree with it, then you should not still be in office, period, right? So how do we stay involved in those types of things, right? Judy Ross said we need to be more strategic with our vote. Absolutely. And being more strategic with our vote also means being more aware. So we still cannot just have like these vague theories about what we think people want to do. It still comes back to education. It still comes back to paying attention to the bills that are being presented. Still comes back to like, what are the conversations? Who is presenting the conversations? Who is showing that they support those conversations? Who is saying they oppose those conversations? There still needs to be intelligence involved in the process, reading, researching, and understanding what's going on so that we can use our vote to our benefit, right? Our intelligent influence for alternatives needs to be placed in the forefront. In Nigeria, they forced vaccinations on the public. In Tanzania, the president announced that tests received from the US, the UK, and China were all contaminated, creating false positives via samples from a human, an anima, and a pawpaw plant that all came back positive. Again, that requires our research, that requires that we stay informed, and that requires that we participate in the process. We cannot just leave it to other people to tell us, what we should know. Like, we need to do the work and we need to know for ourselves so that we can make intelligent decisions as individuals and as a collective. You know what? I'm sorry. Oh no, here we go. I heard the rumors for all employment and not just medical workers. Heard rumors that there will be tax penalties if you don't get vaccinated. These is all just rumors for now, but possible ways to enforce it if it was mandatory. Again, we just want to make sure that the rumors are, if they're just rumors, then they're just rumors. And again, let's not subscribe to fear philosophy and think that the rumor is going to bear true. The responsible thing at that point is to then do the research. Like, okay, this is a rumor. Is this rumor based on a bill that's on the table? Is this rumor based on an executive order? Is this rumor based on conversations that have taken place? Do the research, get the information, know what's going on so that you can be informed. And then once you're informed, you can make an educated decision based off what you know, right? Not just off of rumors. Because I think what ends up happening is that the rumors feed us into fear. That's really what happens. The rumors feed us into being afraid of the system and being afraid. And we have every right to be afraid of the system. Don't get me wrong. I ain't saying we're supposed to love this system. This system ain't for us. This government ain't for us. This is not our world. Like, I'm very clear. So I'm not making no mistake that we should have a distrust for this system. We should have a distrust for this system. But because we don't trust this system, that means that we should be doing everything in our power to stay one step ahead of this system. We shouldn't just be letting the system lead us in the path they want us to go. Again, where we're just like, oh, I guess they're going to pass a bill. Let's just wait and see what happens. Like, no, if we don't trust this system and we know this system is not set up to support the prosperity and the abundance and the health and the wealth of Black bodies, then why are we waiting for this system to tell us what the future is going to look like? We need to be active agents in our survival. We need to know what's going on. We need to be aware. Like, that's our responsibility. Awareness is our responsibility. Involvement is our responsibility. Resistance is our responsibility. So we can't just throw our hands up and be like, we don't, as long as we are living in America, we're going to be subject to their laws. If we continue to be here, then we have to use this system. We have to stay one step ahead of the system, and we have to find ways to outsmart the system. And by just being afraid and sitting on our hands, that's never going to do it for us. So we need to do the research. We need to know more information. We need to associate the rumors with the things that are true, the bills, the laws, etc. And then we need to get together with others in our area so that we can vote for the politicians who are going to further our agenda, not theirs, to the best of our ability. Adam Clayton Powell is a great example of how we can use political power to protect our people and empower. Oops, I think I lost it. Here we go. And empower our people. Absolutely. Adam Clayton Powell is a great example. So I guess the question then is like, who's going to be the Adam Clayton Powells for our generation? Right? Like, where are the people that we're willing to vote into place who we're like, for example, right here in New Jersey, Dr. Akil Kalfani is running for, is it state senator or represent House of Representatives, state representative? He's running for office. So like, okay, all of us who are in the like Akil Kalfani, we should be voting for him. We should be helping to support him. We should be encouraging his run, and we should be helping him to win, right? Because we know that this is a brother, like, he is initiated into Ifa tradition. He is conscious. He's someone who supported the temple for a very long time. So how do we get behind the people who are going to have our agenda at heart? How do we identify those people? How do we encourage those people? How do we support those people? Because if we don't give them our support, they have to go get support from somewhere else, right? Like, because so if we put ourselves behind them, then we can be guaranteed that they will always operate for us. They will work for us. If we don't get behind them, then they'll work for whoever gets behind them, right? And so we have to identify the Adam Clayton Powells of our generation. Emily Lawrence said, we will never be part of the system. We are citizens against our own natural rights. Laws were set up against us. We were brought here as slaves. We are prisoners of war. We can never be part of evil. It is against our nature. I'm serious. I don't know. Like, I don't know what else. He said, are y'all serious? Like, I'm serious. I'm very serious. Like, at the end of the day, if we don't participate, just because we don't participate doesn't mean we're not subject to their laws. Like, again, I reiterate that. Like the prisons are filled with Black men who are prisoners of war, and we have allowed the governmental system to use its power to demonize Black bodies. Period. Like, the war on drugs was a demonization of Blackness. You understand what I'm saying? Like, there's so many things that happen in this country that are purposeful demonizations of Blackness. So at some point or another, we can't just keep ignoring the system. The system is clearly not ignoring us. Right. They have a targeted and purposeful intention towards us. So what is our targeted and purposeful intention to resist and to tear that down and to overcome that? We cannot just ignore it. We cannot just be like, there's a lot of different things people want to do. They're like, well, if we don't sag our pants, then maybe they won't arrest us. I said it several weeks ago. It's bullshit. They will never. That's like, you cannot respectable Negro your way to having white people believe that you're human. Like, that's never going to happen. White people don't see us as human, and white people who are racist and don't respect us, there's literally nothing we can do to change that. So when you have governmental structures and systems in place that are meant to harm us, not just to neutralize us and neutralize our power, but to actively harm us, you can't just be like, well, I'm not a part of the system, so that don't have nothing to do with me. Like, if you a Black body in this country, it got everything to do with you. Because any one of us could have been Ahmaud Arbery this week. Any one of us could have been that sister, Breonna, who was in her own house, minding her own business, and got shot by the police, doing literally nothing, because this system does not protect us. So when do we actively choose to protect ourselves? That's all I'm advocating for, right? Period. I'm just saying that we have a conscious responsibility to advocate for and fight for ourselves. And that if we don't do that, then we are actively allowing this system to continue to terrorize, demonize, and harm us. Period. There's no two ways about it, really. African people, wherever they are located, must be organized to influence any politician, irrespective of that politician's ideology, to do our bidding for issues that concern our communities. That is being organized economically, politically, and culturally. With our cultures being our director and resource, we must be organized to neutralize our enemies. I agree with you completely. I think that it requires. I think it requires a number of things. Like you start by you have a good candidate, then you get people behind that candidate, and then those people become ambassadors for that candidate, and they go out into their families, into their churches, into their communities, into their temples, etc., and they speak on behalf of that person, and they have that person come through and be like, I make promises to you, this is what I'm about, I'm willing to hear what your concerns are, these is why we need to be worried about these issues, these is why these issues is important to us, these is why these issues should be these issues is important to me, and why these issues should be important to you. So you need good people behind the politician to help raise the profile of the politician, because like ultimately, like, are African people a monolith? No, we're not. And so right now we're not all, we don't all believe and want the same thing, but that doesn't mean that we can't all get behind a cause. It just needs to be, that cause just needs to be elevated. So if the politician is what we all need to get behind, then we need to, the people who are supporting need to help do the work to be the ambassador for that politician, get behind that politician, raise the profile of that politician. Fact, New Jersey tried to pass a mandatory vaccination bill in December and again in January, so they will not stop trying. My understanding, and I could be wrong, we could talk about this. I don't know how long we've been talking about this, but maybe we want to move on in a few minutes. And so, Majority Rao, we could talk about this at another time. My understanding is that the mandatory vaccination bill was in relation to children, and it's in relation to whether or not children can go to school. So right now in New Jersey, you can have a religious exemption from vaccinations for your children. First of all, because again, outside of the hospital thing, I've never heard of adults having a mandatory vaccination. That's number one. So the mandatory vaccinations are really in relation to children, and right now you can get a religious exemption in the state of New Jersey. You cannot get neither a religious exemption nor a moral exemption in New York. They've already passed a mandatory vaccination bill in New York for children cannot go to school, cannot go to daycare, etc., unless they've been vaccinated. So they were trying to pass the same law in New Jersey. So again, I don't know how that would affect adults and how that would be imposed on adults. I'm not saying that it won't be. I'm not saying that it can't be. I'm just saying I don't know. So let's do the research, right? And so then again, I would also, the second part to that, I would also say, like, that also goes back to, like, who are the people who are supporting this? Who are the people who want this? Who are the people in the New Jersey State Senate and House and Representatives, etc., that are pushing that bill? And let's use our energy to get them out of office and to let them know how serious we are about not having that bill passed. We can't just be like, oh my God, they tried to do this thing. What is our job to stop this thing from happening? What is our responsibility? What is our power? Right? Like, what is our power? Like, when do we as Black people start to just be like, yo, we have some power here? Or do we just constantly say, oh, the white man is just too strong, I just can't beat him? Like, come on, guys. Like, what is our power in this situation as people, as a community, as a collective? At what point do we have and let's just be also clear, when it comes to mandatory vaccinations, there's probably other people who are not Black who also don't want mandatory vaccination. So how do we connect with those people in our areas to help get behind politicians who are not going to impose mandatory vaccinations on us, etc.? So it doesn't have to just be on this one particular issue. As far as vaccinations, it doesn't have to just be about all Black people, right? You can also talk to Hispanics and talk to Asians and talk to white folks who also don't want this bill, right? Like, so my point is that we are not powerless against this. There are things that we can do. There are things that we should be doing. And I just want to make sure that we are reminding ourselves of the fact that we, as empowered divine African beings, our divinity and our empowerment is not solely relegated to the spiritual realm. Like, we have the means to master the physical realm as well. We have the means to master the emotional realm. We have the means to master the mental realm. We are divine beings having a human experience. So our divinity is not limited to one area. Our divinity is innumerable. Like, it is beyond. So, like, at what point do we bring that divinity and use that divinity and use that empowerment and use that strength in the actual human experience? Or do we just keep being like, oh, well, I mean, I'm a divine being, but my human self can't do nothing? Like, no, your divine self can do something about everything. So when do we use our power? And it goes back to a conversation we were having a few weeks ago when we were talking about where the mind goes, energy flows. And we were talking about, like, not spending all of our time just looking at our enemy and being like, oh my God, they have so many plans. Oh my God, they're doing so much work. Like, we spend like 90% of our time worrying about our enemy, which means we only have 10% of our energy left to actually do the work we need to do in this world. We need to shift that. We need to make our agenda very clear to ourselves and to others. We need to spend 90% of our time and our energy on executing and activating our agenda in this world, and 10% of our energy focused on what other people's agenda is, because that's why our energy, and that's why we can't move things in this world, because our energy, we don't have enough energy for ourselves. We don't even have enough energy for our own agenda right now. So that's why we're failing. That's why we're falling behind. Like, we as divine beings, we are co-creators of reality. So why don't we just create a better reality?
True. That's on fire. Yeah.
Bunham said most Christian fundamentalists, regardless of ethnicity, are against mandatory vaccinations. There you go. I'm about to go find me some Christian fundamentalists. I'm gonna be like, help me get behind this. Like, I don't gotta agree with your Christianity. I just need you for this thing over here. Like,
just to be honest and responsible, we're not anti-vax. We're just pro-truth.
Yes.
Because this, like, it's about the agenda of the ones who's administering the vaccine. So it's not even, we don't even have issue with the doctors or the medical profession, but who's funding them? Is it Big Pharma? Is it Bill Gates? Is Bill Gates funding the Big Pharma to fund the doctors? Because the word doctor comes from the Latin word doxiere, and it means to teach. Are the doctors really teaching us what's going on? It seems like we're getting more information from laymen on the streets about what this thing is instead of from the doctors, because they have to go by the agenda of who funds them. So we don't have a good history with the government and even caring for us. Like I said, they're still shooting us down like dogs in the street. So when it's coming off like we're anti-vax, it's just like we just have the right to have a healthy skepticism about what other people have intended for not just us as melanated citizens, but citizens just in general. Like I said, we got to connect with whoever has healthy skepticism about this, and we got to demand that they answer our questions, because we have intricate questions about vaccines, what goes into them, the effects, the side effects of it, and it's our right to know, to make an educated decision whether we're participating in that or not. That's all it is that we're standing on. That's our stance. I know it seems anti-vax, because I know some people are saying that vaccines are African. I think Jabari gave a lecture about this. I forgot the name of the slave. The slave hailed somewhere from West Africa, and he said the West Africans have figured a way to inoculate people by some people that were exposed to a disease, whatever that it passed. They will take some of their blood and they will insert it, or intravenously or whatever, in the wound of a healthy person. Therefore, the healthy person would build the antibodies for. So there's nothing wrong with the science of vaccines. It's just the agenda of the ones who are administering the vaccines.
Yeah.
Was also interesting on the world front. They said, what I'm reading, that Madagascar they claim they have a cure for the COVID. I think they made a tea or a drink. It's called COVID-19, and it's being distributed, I think, in Kenya and Tanzania, different like Africa is kind of signing on. And interestingly, I said, like, okay, I'm waiting to see what the doctors have to say about this because there's always this back and forth between the medical profession and naturopaths and stuff. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, said they take issue with it and that it could be dangerous to people's health if they take this tea. And I said, that's interesting. I said, why? Well, how is it endangering their health? Because they're giving this stuff out free or nearly free. They're making it something that the people could just drink on their own and they could deal with this because I think they're claiming that they did less than 20 tests and they haven't proven that it's cured the COVID. So I said, okay, remember, vaccination is big business. So this is an issue. You don't want people to be able to empower themselves with something that's over the counter or something that they might plant in their own backyard without a middleman telling us what's good for us or what's not good for us. So I did research. I was like, okay, what is this drink? So it turns out that it's called sweet wormwood, Artemisia. That's what it's called, Artemisia. So what the World Health Organization is concerned about is that that it will make you immune to their anti-malaria drug because the anti-malaria drug uses the same herb for their, remember, pharmacy means magical herb, so they're still using the similar science as naturopaths, but they're saying if you get the population taking this, it might make them more susceptible to malaria because malaria used to kill 1 million people over there in Africa, and now due to this anti-malaria drug, it reduced it down to 400,000. So they're saying if you got people drinking this tea, what happens if they build up immunity to that drug? So that's their concern with it. So just so you know, we got sweet wormwood tea over here too. If you look on the market, it's a tea called the tea of life. That's what it is, sweet wormwood. Wormwood is an anti-parasitic and it's an anti-inflammatory. Remember, the parts of the coronavirus affects the lungs and you have an inflammatory response in the lungs and it goes downhill from there. So if you clear the parasites, clear the bacteria out and create homeostasis in the body, you won't be inflamed. So it's not a direct cure for COVID. What happens is it keeps the body balanced. It keeps the pH balanced. It balances the inflammatory response of the body. So if you were to come in contact with that, it wouldn't be as severe. And just so you know, they have also taken issue with China. China using their traditional remedies also, and they pretty much almost have 100% success rate at this point. So the WHO also saying you got to be careful of the herbs because some of their herbs have licorice. Some of their traditional remedies have licorice and it has ephedra. I don't know if y'all remember ephedra about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they took that off the market because a few people died because it shot their blood pressure up. Same with licorice root. Licorice, if you have hypertension, it might agitate hypertension. So they say, hey, it got licorice root in it and ephedra in it, so you can't just be telling people to take that because it might harm them. And I said, well, we listen to the doctors all the time, and we listen to them sell us these products on TV that they know is going to kill a whole bunch of people. So with over-the-counter medicine, 52,000 people die a year. So I said, just do your comparison. And remember, it's doctors over in China administering these herbal components with ephedra. So it's under the medical profession. Mm-hmm. Same with Madagascar. It's under their medical profession that they're administering it. So it's supposed to be safe. So now if you do the comparison of how many people died due to natural remedies in the taking pharmaceutical drugs, it's almost like people that die due to the natural stuff don't even register. I'm sure you could barely find 100 people that die using something natural because the natural stuff is pretty much food. It's a food supplement, while the pharmaceutical thing is an official drug, and there's hundreds upon thousands of people dying of that, while barely 100 die yearly of the natural thing. And if they do die, it's because they wasn't following the directions. If they do die, because it also, remember, it says when you're taking herbs and stuff, it says seek advice of your physician, right, or whatever. So they use, remember on the market they had this Stamina RX, they had the sexual products, and so people was dying off of that because they were sneaking Viagra in some of the natural products. But when you do the research on the people that died from taking those things, they was taking way too much than what they were supposed to, so that's why they died. So it's just interesting. So we just have to keep that in perspective. So there probably are cures to it, but once again, the pharmaceutical industry is only interested in patented cures that they can
Make
control.
money off of. Yeah.
What are people
It's a
saying?
lot of comments actually. All right, so I'm gonna. So Jabari spoke about the smallpox vaccine. So that was him, Netta Jabari Osaze. At the Shrine of Ma'at, they had their Comedic Ascension today. We didn't finish watching Comedic Ascension, but for those of you, we want to encourage you guys to go watch Comedic Ascension, especially if he was talking about smallpox vaccines today. We should all watch that. Two, vaccinations as a health invention was revolutionary. It has now been weaponized. Yeah, because the vaccine, like, if you talk about vaccinations from like 200 years ago, 300, 500, 1,000 years ago, they not like the vaccinations now. Even we were talking about this a few weeks ago. Sir Chef Army Kalu came over to do something in the house for me, and I was saying to him, like, if he got vaccinated when he was born, and then the Sook got vaccinated when he was born, and then I got vaccinated when I was born. Like, we talked 3 different decades at that point. Like, the vaccinations were different in each of those different decades. And then the vaccinations from when I was born to what kids are getting now is totally different. So you talking about over the course of like a lifetime, the vaccinations, you've increased the number of vaccinations, you've changed the ingredients in the vaccinations. So it's not just that vaccinations is problematic, it's also the ingredients, it's also the number, it's a combination of multiple things. So that's what Ashanti says here. It's the extra ingredients in vaccines that's the problem. Things like formaldehyde, aborted fetus, mercury, etc. Totally would agree with you. It's not necessarily the vaccines or the idea of vaccinations itself. It's like, what's in it? Has it been tested? What's the long-term ramifications? That's why I started off by saying, like, well, no one's will have tested it over 5 years or 10 years. They're just going to give it to us, and we don't know what that's going to mean for our evolution as a people in 10 years. Like, you could give me something and then next year be like, ooh, we didn't test this, so now you can't have children. Like, what you mean? Like you just don't know. So that's dangerous from my perspective. That's why, again, you have to ask questions, you have to do research, you have to be cautious, you got to be skeptical. You can't just be gung-ho for anything that the government gives us. We have plenty of reason to be skeptical of them. It's like when they mention elderberry isn't any good. Gary Knoll is a great resource on this issue. I know you agree with that for sure. It seems we are subscribed to the consumerist system, which is a low vibrational energy. How can we ever subscribe to vaccines when we know it to be a business and the only purpose is for profits? How can we as spiritual beings who are supposed to understand nature ascribe to something which is for those in cages like CAFO? I don't know what CAFO is, CAFO, but for those in cages, right? So again, I don't think we're saying that we're subscribing to vaccines. I think we're saying we understand that the pharmaceutical industry is an industry. It's not the same as like when you go to your local village medicine man, right? Like, we're not in that place anymore. So we understand that we have to ask questions. We have to be cautious. And that we don't encourage that. Like, if there's a natural remedy, then we would absolutely want to go that direction rather than taking the medicines. Somebody else said something about how the side effects be worse than the and I think that again contributes to like why vaccinations and other pharmaceuticals is problematic. Like, I be like, you watch TV and it'll be like, you could take this and it'll get rid of your psoriasis. Side effects include heart attack, liver disease. You like liver disease, like heart attack, like just so I could get rid of psoriasis? Like come on, son. Like, I might have a whole heart attack. It's just like, nah. Like, I don't think that's worth that. So, okay. If an anti-malaria drug uses the same herb, then wouldn't it make you resistant to malaria as well? The idea that it makes people more susceptible to malaria doesn't hold water if they use the same herb. Again, that goes back to like, let's use our minds, right? Like, let's do the research. Let's think critically about these things. Like, let's not just listen to what they're telling us. Like, so that's why we wanted to have this conversation with you guys. Like the drug that they are using for malaria, hydrochloroquine. This drug is also for lupus and for rheumatoid arthritis patients, which means it's going to do different things to different people, right? According to some nurses, most people are dying from medical malpractice. You know, I think we spoke about that, Majudy Ra, a few weeks ago, and I was talking about like that's been the case when it comes to African people in the medical industry. Like we don't get taken care of the way that white people do. That's a fact that can be proven and has been proven over a variety of studies over a long period of time, right? So, you know, black mothers have higher rates of like, you know, death during childbirth and things like that. Black children have higher rates of death during childbirth. They've said that if a black woman comes in and she says her pain is out of 5, they assume she's exaggerating or they assume she's not in that much pain. If a white woman says her pain is out of 5, they're like, oh my God, your pain's out of 5. We must give you something immediately. Like, so there's all these stories. Even recently read something about like a black woman who went and said, I have a headache, and they were like, oh, just take a nap, and she died. Turned out she had like a brain aneurysm or something crazy. So like there's all these stories that we know of how they ignore black people and they ignore their pain and they ignore their needs. They treat them like criminals, like you must be a drug addict, you just want drugs and things like that. We absolutely have to do our best to advocate for ourselves and for the patients who are there. The COVID-19 is making that very difficult right now because they quarantine people, so you can't have visitors or you can't have your family members there. So that makes it difficult for us to be advocates, but that doesn't mean that we should just leave it up. Again, it's our responsibility. We can't just leave it in their hands. So like, what can we do? Can we call every day? Can we can the patient have their phone so we FaceTime? Every time the doctor is there, we're on FaceTime, you know, things like that. What can we do to make sure that things go right? You know, when the Sid was in the hospital last summer, like someone was in the hospital with him like pretty much 24/7 the whole time. Like he was like pretty much never alone. And so because of that, it requires the nurses and the medical staff to take the situation seriously, like, because we gonna hold you accountable and we right here in your face, you know, holding you accountable. So how can we do that for each other? Sure. And we're gonna, and even past this particular crisis and past this particular situation, we're gonna have to continue to do that and hold the medical industry accountable until those discrepancies stop happening. When I was a child, this is from Ranu. When I was a child, we only got 1 or 2 vaccines. Now children get 5 or 6 at a time, which is problematic. That's exactly the case. Or that goes back to what I was talking about with Sir Shep Armikau, who is in your generation, Ranu. And you know, I'm just a smidge younger than you guys. So I had a different vaccination schedule, and then now the children now have a much different vaccination schedule, and it's really, really problematic.
We got the right topic today.
Yeah.
Chatty.
Yeah. Notice how quickly they go through the list of side effects at the end of the ad. Yeah, they be like, side effects. They mumbling and stuff. You got the people in the commercial jumping around like they so happy, like. Yeah.
Just enough, you get all the side effects and you ain't looking at like the people in the commercial.
Yeah, right. So yeah, and even in the doctor's office, doctors have a habit. They could be real callous. They could just be like, "You got pain? Here you go." Like I remember the last time I went to the doctor. And he was just like, do you need me to give you a shot? I'm like, I didn't ask for a shot. I just asked you to check out my thing. And he's just like, so you don't need medication? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I feel like I can deal with this in the natural. I went to the doctor to get diagnosed so that I could come back to my naturopathic healer and come back to the SUD and be like, this is what the doctor says is wrong. So tell me what to do from a natural perspective. But he was just super quick. He's like, I'll write you a prescription right now. What do you want? What do you want? And I'm like, no, I don't want anything. So, yeah, Majudy Ross said 35 vaccinations are scheduled. Sinette B said, I had it happen to me last year. They assumed I was a drug addict when I was telling them I could feel something in my brain and it was making me unconscious on a daily basis. I never did drugs in my life, not even weed, and I don't drink. There you go. So dua for your testimony. I'm so sorry that happened to you. But that's exactly like, so now we all know somebody specifically who that happened to. And so it goes back to like, these stories are not rare and they're not like, it's not a one-time thing. This didn't just happen to her. It happens to, I've heard it happen to Black women a lot. I don't know how much it happens to Black men, but I bet you it happens just as much to Black men. And so, yeah, I mean, if this is what's happening, like we have to be cognizant of that, and we cannot allow the medical industry to treat us like our pain is not real.
That's right.
Yeah.
YouTube is quiet.
Yeah, YouTube is a little quiet. That's okay. They just soaking it all in. They soaking it all in. Yeah. There's a lot of food done in the hospitals, but then there is a lot of political things going on from the top level that us on the front line either have to adhere to or are negatively affected by it. Absolutely. I mean, there's politics to everything. So, yeah, there's politics to everything. So that makes sense. Dua, Seshnasu Sanjeti. Writing those scripts so fast make it easy to get addicted to those pain meds. Yeah, it does, right? And then here you go. Like then next time they'll be like, "Are you an addict?" Like I didn't ask for those pills. You gave me those pills. Darlene said black men don't go to the doctor as much as black women. Probably because black men don't trust doctors. So that makes total sense. In my experience, some of our black patients get less attention than other patients. This is why I spend more time with the black patients. Dua Session Sue. I think that's also a really good point. Just like we were talking about with the politicians and about how about how we have to put politicians in place who are advocates for our agenda. We also have to have people in the medical industry who are advocates for our agendas. So we can't just decide like I'm not going to participate in the medical industry. We need to be administrators, we need to be doctors, we need to be insurance agents, we need to be nurses, we need to be EMTs, we need to be medical techs. Like we need to be at every level.
Yeah.
We need to be hospital VPs and on the board and blah blah blah. We need to be at every level so that we can advocate as well to get rid of those medical discrepancies. We cannot advocate for our agenda if we do not participate in the process.
Yeah, fortunately, I had a system of good black nurses taking care of me when I was in the hospital.
Yeah. This is brilliant, spiritual family, what you are doing. Dua, Imratep Ra Smith. I appreciate that. Please clear up if you are accepting of science or nature, and how do you differentiate both, especially when we do not control, not even the herbal industry, which is our alignment. As a qualified natural therapist, I could not use the learning to heal anyone. I was trained in the nutritional field, and it is inadequate for the true African genetic and nutrigenomic system. I need to be aware of what is accepted within the Kemetic practice. Do you want to start with that? Do you want to start?
Go back that was about.
Yeah, that was. So please clear up if we are accepting of science or nature, and how do you differentiate both? I guess we'll start with that.
Remember, everything is about Ma'at, so we're not anti-science and we're just pro-truth. So what do they say? Truth come in small doses. So whatever we could use for science, we use to our benefit, and whatever is just not resonating with natural principles, we tend to stay away from. Our basic philosophy in the Kemetic thing is cleanse, rebuild, maintain. Mm-hmm. That is the essence of how the body works for African, or just people just in general. Sometimes we make it overcomplicated by using words like science and using words like naturopathy, when the body is basically just requiring for you to cleanse it on the regular and know how to maintain it and build it. So naturally, we're organic people coming from the earth, so we should be choosing foods from the earth, from magnetism, and fruits from the tree, which is electric. So we're electromagnetic beings. So that should be the major thing that our diet comprises of. And then there's things called superfoods, and then there's things called tonics, because the foods, the vegetables and the fruits don't have what they're originally supposed to have, so you're going to have to supplement it with things. So we enforce, or we encourage people to get trace minerals, because you need at least 80 to 103 trace minerals in order for your body to do what it was meant to do, that nature meant for it to do. So those are just some things to start. Are you getting your minerals? Are you getting your sunlight? Are you getting your water? Are you breathing? If you're doing those things, then the body can access whatever nutrition that may exist in whatever amounts that is in the food that you're eating, if it qualifies as food. And just understand anything man-made is usually not good for you. So we eat nature-made foods, or we try to encourage people to eat nature-made foods as much as possible and not depend on man-made foods. That's when we get in trouble. Even with man-made vitamins and things like that. So we try to get our supplements as close to the source as possible. So if you can't get the fruits, try to get the powdered supplements and stuff, but not the Centrum vitamins and all of those things. Try to get it from natural sources.
Yeah. I would just add also that, like, you could still also, within nature, there is a science to food combining.
Yeah.
There is a science to, like, combine
types.
to blood types and to combining certain herbs for a particular remedy or particular outcome, and things like that. Like, there's still, so people will call that chemistry, right? Like the way that you experiment with and determine different combinations and how those combinations affect the body. And
Yeah.
and chemistry is a science. And so, but you're still doing that through the natural thing and not necessarily through the pharmaceutical thing. So there is a science that exists in nature as well. So when you hear, if what you're hearing is that we sound like we accept both science and nature, like, because we do. I don't know how. Yeah, I think the reality is that what we're talking, I wouldn't even say against what we're speaking about today is just acknowledging that the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry as it's set up in this country is not the same as, like, science and chemistry of understanding the way that herbs and medicine, natural herbs and natural products from the earth chemically align in our bodies and things like that. Like, that's just, like, the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry is just very far away from that at this point. And so I think what we're saying is that ideally we want to get back to that. Like, how do we do that? And I think we've been talking about that. Like, if you go back and watch the past episodes of the Crook and the Flail, what you just said about the superfoods and etc., like, you spoke about that much further in depth. I want to say in episode 2. So I would tell Imratep to go back and watch episode 2, because you could get more insight about our perspective from going back to watch those episodes where we've been talking about our perspective on health and on herbs and etc., all through those episodes.
And we take the knowledge that we learn from science so we can have a scientific approach to naturopathy or the study of the natural way, so we understand the constituents of the active qualities or properties of a plant. So science does come in handy. It helps us understand what it is that the plant's supposed to do, as opposed to going the pharmaceutical route. So let's just get into it. So every Crook and the Flail, we give a product that we feel that will help people with this pandemic or address people's concerns with this pandemic. So I tend not to get all exotic. I tend to deal with products that I feel that people could get at their local stores, whether it's the vitamin shop or whether it's your mom and pop health store, because everybody, truthfully and honestly, everybody's not going to grow a garden. Even though we all know we suppose or we should try, that's just not the reality. So you got to meet people where they're at. So every time I'm speaking about health, I'm going to tell you some things you're supposed to be able to get from the store. Some of the stuff they have in the supermarkets. If you have a reputable supermarket, they may have it. So today I want to deal with oregano, the plant as well as the oil of oregano. You might get that at your supermarket, and I seen the oil of oregano at vitamin shop. So it's common things, but we're trying to, what we get into is how and why it works, not just because I said it, but what is the research behind it and how and why it works. And also, far as healing, if you have a reputable healer, each reputable healer has their own technology on how they read the body of their client, because each one of us have specific needs. There is no one cure-all that's going to work for everything. So the current head might have a headache, I might have a headache, but the reasons and the factors on why the current head has a headache may be different from mine. So we can't always take the same thing, because he could take it and he'd be like, it didn't work for me. And then I shouldn't be perplexed because he has a slightly different body chemistry and the blood chemistry that I have. So if you're dealing with a reputable healer, they know these type of things and they're prescribing, I can't even say that word, and they're where can I say they're
Encouraging.
encouraging or planning a way specifically for the
Yeah.
individual that they're dealing with at hand. So we deal with oregano. Oregano is a Greek word, come from the Greek word oros and ganos. It means mountain of joy. Oregano is a antibacterial, it's an antiviral, it's an antifungal, and it's an immunostimulant. I'm dealing with a lot of antivirals or virucides because this we're dealing in a day and time where we're supposed to be concerned about this virus. So let's deal with things that are supposed to handle that. So oregano oil, its active constituents are is 35% sesquiterpenes and monoterpenes. Sesquiterpenes, like what is that? Sesquiterpenes is the molecule that carries oxygen to the cell. And that sounds familiar. That's like hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the iron molecule that brings oxygen to the cell. So, what did I teach before? When it comes to essential oils, specifically, we use the acronym ROI, ROI. The essential oils are the regenerating, oxygenating, and the immune stimulating qualities of a plant. So, sesquiterpenes is part of the process on how the essential oil brings oxygen to the body. And then you have monoterpenes. Monoterpenes have a calming effect upon the body. So now that just shows you that essential oils and herbs are not a new age thing. When we're talking about monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes, we're talking about chemistry. Chemistry is part of science. Remember that it is the phytonutrients and the cofactors that lend to our body its ability to stay immune to whatever is going on in the planet. So it's two active components in oregano as well as oregano oil, and one is called carver and thymol. Carver is the antibacterial action in the plant or the oil. And thymol, it comes from the word thyme, is also connected to the thyme plant, and that is the antiviral or the virucide action of the plant. So with the pharmaceutical do they would get the plants and just take that chemical out and they would create a drug. And usually the drug is really too strong. You can't drug the body into doing what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to give the body support and cofactors in order for it to do what it's supposed to do. But to force it to do what it has to do is going to cause overcompensation in some other areas of the body, and that's what you call side effects. So the active qualities of thymol, properties of thymol and carbacal. So now, the ancient Kemites and the Greeks used oregano for preservatives as well as poison antidotes. And according to the lore, oregano oil is spiritually is for good luck or good fortune. So as not to sound pseudo about that, usually good luck or bad luck is usually due to some form of blockage in your life, whether it's mental or whether it's physical. So oregano oil is one of the, it's so astringent that it actually clears up blockages. It actually clears the air. So anything that clears up blockages and clears the air, and that's antiviral and those things. So it's going to set to increase your luck because your flow is better. Mm-hmm. Oregano oil stimulates the nerve plexuses in the body. So the nerve plexuses are called ganglias. So that's the physical manifestation of your chakras. Remember, when you're looking at pictures of chakras, they're usually these energy projections that's outside of the body, but those are energy emanations from your organs and your glands that come down your body. But your organs and your glands are fed by your nervous system. So the oregano oil stimulates your nerve ganglias, which then stimulates your glands and your organs, that therefore generates your chakras, your energetic field. So taking oregano oil, which I suggest even over the herb, taking oregano oil is 25 times stronger than the herb. Taking the oregano oil stimulates your electromagnetic field. So therefore, in result, it'll stimulate your metabolism. Everybody's worried about their metabolism and gaining weight. So oregano oil is something that, since it stimulates your glands, it stimulates your hormones. Your hormones are stimulated, then your metabolism is stimulated. So you can make your own antibacterial, antiviral wash by mixing a half a teaspoon of coconut oil, 2 tablespoons of aloe vera gel, because you can make your own wash. So a half a teaspoon of coconut oil, 2 tablespoons, or when I say 2 teaspoons or tablespoons,
Tablespoon.
2 tablespoons of aloe vera gel, 20 drops of lavender essential oil, 10 drops of thyme essential oil, thyme. Thyme. I got the thyme all time on. When I say 10 drops of thyme, 10 drops of eucalyptus. Actually, eucalyptus is has the highest antiviral action of all the essential oils. So 10 drops of eucalyptus oil and 5 drops of oregano oil. And that right there is your antifungal, bacterial, viral, and and immunostimulant. So you can use that as a wash of your hands. And I think that's thorough enough.
Yeah. Let me see what's going on. Well, first off, the sessionist Sue Sanjetti said all Black African medical and health professionals should have and should read. Actually, I'll just put this right here. I know. Perfect. By Harriet Washington, Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Medical Experimentation on Black Americans from the Colonial Times to the Present. So dua for that. Makra said regarding mental health, Blacks are diagnosed with harsher mental health diagnoses and go to higher level of psych hospitalizations than other races. Prejudice everywhere, absolutely. You know, I think again we definitely acknowledge the whole system is against us. We need Black representation on every level, absolutely. Another book we should study is The Code by Dr. Neely Fuller. Our young people need to be motivated and supported to go into health professions that speaks to STEM programs in school, etc. I'll just say that also again speaks to how we have to have our own agenda and put more energy into pushing forward our own agenda. In the Temple of Anu, people have been talking for years about building a school and developing schools and developing classes and teaching lessons, and so like we can't just talk about it, we got to be about it. So instead of worrying about what the white man is doing, like when do we put forth time and put energy behind doing the things that we say we need to do to further our own and to do what needs to be done for ourselves and for our children and for our personal agenda, right? For Black men, it's not that we don't recognize the need for medical attention, it is that we have become hardened and adapted to being self-reliant with our health, coupled with the concept of endurance of pain, which is part of manhood. Sometimes we have to actively recognize and seek medical attention so that we can continue to be alive in our manhood. I would agree with that.
I would say at least see a naturopath. If
Yeah.
you don't trust the doctors, go see a naturopath.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that though, that accepting pain is definitely a significant part of what defines manhood in the Western perspective of manhood. And so we spoke a few Sundays ago about changing, or maybe we didn't speak about that, but it's something that I think about all the time, about how we have to change the way that we define these things. We have to change the way we define masculinity, because masculinity should be defined from an African perspective. We have to change the way we define femininity, because femininity for African people should be defined from an African perspective. So that idea that you said that endurance of pain is part of manhood, that's westernized. Like, how do we eradicate that from our minds and from the way that we choose to walk and live in Ma'at, right? No Flintstone vitamins. You right, Makra. No Flintstone vitamins. Science and nature are not separate entities. The European approach to science is what does not have the African. The European and the African approaches are not the same. I'm sorry, Basil. I'm not entirely sure what you meant there, but I sort of get what you meant. Similarly, spirit and science are not separate in the African ethos. Spirit, science, and nature are one and the same. Your last sentence is absolutely correct. That summed it up entirely. I might have messed up the early part, but you completely correct. In the African, in Kimoyo, spirit, science, and nature are one, you know? You can say recommend to stay within the law if you're not being with a licensed practitioner. Thank you, Basil, because we do know that like health practitioners and naturopaths are not allowed to use the word prescribed. So recommend, encouraged, etc. Okay. Dua. Eating aloe is healthy and repulsive tasting, but it works. It even works against common womb imbalances when consumed. Aloe vera is incredible. Can you give us the ingredients again? There was some concern about what are the ingredients of the bacterial wash. So you want to go through that again?
Lavender, 20 drops of lavender, 10 drops of thyme, 10 drops of eucalyptus, and 5 drops of oregano oil.
With 2 tablespoons of aloe vera, and what was the
aloe
first?
Vera gel.
Aloe vera gel. And
half a teaspoon of coconut oil.
Coconut oil. Okay, you guys got that? Many of us will give bad advice out of ignorance. For example, we will say things like, stop looking at the news in regards to SARS-CoV-2. We use fear to justify our inability to discern good information from bad information, or deliberate neglect of objective data dealing with virology, epidemiology, and immunology. I see this across my news feed often. I mean, the truth, I would say, I'll just say that I think a lot of people are afraid. I'll say it that way. I don't know that I think people are purposely I don't know that I think that Black people are purposely trying to give bad advice, or I think that people are just afraid, and so they are subscribing to fear philosophy. They are listening to conspiracy theories. They are not doing their research. They are operating from a place of fear. I would absolutely agree with that. The other point is, just as we have to be mindful of the pharmaceutical medicines that are taken because of possible side effects, there are also precautions to be taken of herbs. Absolutely. The same critique we give pharmaceutical medicines, we have to give the same discernment of herbs. For an example, many antioxidant teas have about 15 milligrams of caffeine that should be taken with caution or avoided by people with hypertension.
That's why you should have a natural health care practitioner, because that practitioner would know your body and know your dosage, as opposed to just self-medicating.
Absolutely. Yep. That's why you got to go to the medicine man or the medicine woman. You got to go to the shaman.
Nah, to Mintu. Forget the shaman. Mintu Rock. There's a Life Strength and Health. Right?
Yes, Life Strength and Health in South Plainfield, New Jersey. They are still doing virtual consultations these days.
Put the link in. I know they on. Put the link in.
Yeah, put the link in the chat, guys, for Life Strength and Health. Aloe vera gel, coconut oil, lavender, eucalyptus, essential oil, thyme as well, and oregano oil. Okay? All right. Fantastic. So we got it. All right, so that's all.
And with that, I hope you're being mindful of your possible allergies. You want people breaking out, right. So that the test to put a little bit in the crease of your arm, so if it's so you could test the strength of it, if it's burning, if you're having an allergic reaction, instead of just going hard body and thinking you're gonna
just put it all on your skin and you're like, no, test it out first.
Yeah, and don't get that in your eye, because only Jesus could save you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right, so I think last we wanted to talk.
Like we way over time.
Like we way over time?
Like an hour and a half.
So you good? We good?
Oh, I'm good. It's up to them. Like, it's Mother's Day. I know people might got other stuff to do.
Give us back our witch doctor. Yeah. Yes, for Judy Rod. That's what we gotta do. All right, so we all are we? I know. Yes, you're right. People do got stuff to do. It's Mother's Day. Shoot, I got stuff to do. I gotta go honor my own mama. So So you all good? We're gonna close out here, and then we will get to some of the questions that you guys submitted at next time we meet for the Crook and the Flail. Sounds good?
Remember, submit your questions if you want to hear us expound on specific aspects of the culture or our philosophy or the comedic approach to these things.
Yeah, I think we've talked about, coronavirus and the vaccinations, and we talked about what's going on. Like, we've done a lot of that, so I think, we want to start to get back to a sense of normalcy and just, really just expounding on what it means to be comedic and just like helping people to walk the path and to cultivate righteousness in their lives. So we'll be moving in that direction for sure.
So for the next episode, we'll be dealing specifically, because we came to deal with it today, but for the next episode, we'll be dealing with how to live ma'at, because that was a question that came from someone in Sweden, right?
In Sweden, yeah. And we have someone on today who's from the Netherlands. So,
The Netherlands.
yeah. Dua Nenter.
Divine lands.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, Dua again for joining us today, and Dua again for your time, your energy, your comments. This was really a powerful conversation. I'm just really grateful that you guys brought the energy and brought the heat and the questions and and all of that. And thank you for sharing space with us. And we'll see you guys next Sunday at 1 p.m. for our regularly scheduled communion service. Communion is different from the Crook and the Flail. It is a different format. So it will consist pretty much of a lesson that is based on the Seba'it, the wisdom teachings. That we'll be sharing is far less interactive. We will not be talking about anything related, I don't think we will be talking about anything related to coronavirus. But we will be here next Sunday for communion at 1 p.m. Dual casting again on Facebook and on YouTube. And so we'll see you guys then. All right.
All right.
Shemi Matat.
Shemi Matat.